hello there and welcome to this composer interview. My name is Elias Luukkanen and today we have a special guest here with us. A person that has composed for many different games and is a Finnish composer. Let me introduce you to Mikko Tarmia. How are you doing, Mikko?
Hello, I'm fine and thanks for having me here.
A pleasure is all on our side. How is your summer been going?
It's pretty hot. It's about maybe 30.
As you have made for SOMA, Overgrowth, Amnesia, Penumbra games and others as well. So, you know, if I personally look at here, many ambient sort of feel of games.
Yeah, that's what I do and mostly.
How did you found yourself in this sort of area of making music? What is your music? What led to that?
That's kind of funny thing. Before you me my background, I started composing music in the beginning of 90s, and my buddies were doing music with the Pro Tracker and Amiga. And I copied the program and tried to do a few tunes by myself. And we did a lot of techno music back then. And later on, I transferred my style into more classical music.
Making music, is that correct?
I didn't do too well with the techno music. I tried to make record deals, but no one was interested back then. Maybe the stuff I was doing wasn't that good.
What year was that? May I ask?
Like 96, 97.
All right.
And then I figured out maybe I could do music for computer games. And I was still doing music with Amiga and was watching that scene. Amiga was going dead quite soon at that point, but there was still some games coming out, and I contacted some developer who was doing real-time strategic game for Amiga.
And what was that called?
I don't remember, but I didn't get the job. But I studied orchestral music some more, and in 2001 I had my first project, which was Codeblender Software's Deep Trouble.
Indeed. So, you know, can you tell something about that here? But before we go that, yes, people in the comments say we have some buffering. Unfortunately, yes, that's my fault, not anyone else's here. I live in this sort of middle of nowhere with no connection towers and this sort of stuff. So, yes, unfortunately, that is the case. However, we are currently recording this interview as well. So afterwards, we're going to be having it, you know, fully functional and ready to go. But yes, can you tell something about that game?
Yeah, the Deep Trouble was my first game project, and at that time I was studying classical music, instrumentation and orchestration. I was in Music Institute, and I really tried to develop my skills with orchestral music. And Codeblender Software is a Mac developer. If you are not a Mac guy, who was not a Mac guy at that point, you probably have never heard of these games.
I actually tried to research something about this Deep Trouble. So what kind of game is it?
The way I got these projects from Codeblender, there was this iDev Games forum for Mac developers, and I left my post in the forum that I could do some music for your game, so please contact me. And I got contacted by this guy.
Really?
From Codeblender. Yeah.
So you went to forums and then you posted there and some people contacted you?
Yeah, but back then there wasn't so much competition around. I was like one of the few people at the moment, composers writing in that forum, and I got lucky, I guess.
Very nice. Nowadays the forums usually are very crowded.
Yeah, it became crowded a few years after then, but I was lucky and I did few projects with Codeblender, and at the same time I met Jens Nilsson from Frictional Games. Or the Frictional Game didn't exist back then, but I was doing work with him, and he was an audio designer for these projects. And then 2006, Jens asked me if I could do some music for Penumbra tech demo, the first one before the actual official Penumbras. It was just a small demo, but it got very good feedback, and they then decided to make a commercial game.
So you met some people. So you met very important kind of connection, and then you started collaborating with him much more in your early times.
Yeah, Jens was another founder of Frictional Games, so he had very much power in that.
So Frictional Games, for people that don't know, it's a game development studio. And what sort of games they are focusing on doing, Mikko?
Horror games. They have done few games. The Penumbra trilogy back in 2007 and 2008. Then Amnesia, The Dark Descent, 2010 or 11, and then SOMA, 2015, and now the upcoming Amnesia Rebirth.
All right. So you have been
which
very
should
much.
Come out with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just.
Amnesia Rebirth, which should come out later this year. I don't know the day yet, but.
Nice. So you're actively working on stuff.
It's been announced.
All right. Oh, we got some early
Not really. I don't know if my buddies wouldn't have copied me Pro Tracker for Amiga. I don't know where I could have been now. But,
really? So that was
my
very
youth.
Major thing.
Yeah, that was my youth, and I listened to music, and I did and kind of composed music, if you can say that music what I was doing back then. But
so what kind of tools did you use to make this music?
Yeah, I started with the Pro Tracker Amiga. Then I moved to Octamed, which Pro Tracker was a 4-channel tracker for Amiga. You know, Amiga had only 4 tracks, basically. 2 left and 2 right.
Oh man, so a bit limited, but you worked with it.
Yeah, but Octamed had 8, because if you had like something like Amiga 1200, it could handle the 8 tracks with high quality. So I moved to Oct now, and it had all kind of plugins which I had to learn.
So you're more of a Mac guy.
Yeah, I'm mainly Mac guy, but I'm using Basic right now. And this one is Basic.
All right. What kind of early inspirations you had with your career? You know, songs, composers who contributed to your current style you have.
Sorry.
Yes. Do you have any kind of people that inspired you in the beginning?
Some composers. Oh yeah. I was listening much of techno music back in 90s, but my biggest influence at the time was Aphex Twin, and I was kind of following what he was doing.
Who is that composer?
Like Aphex Twin.
Aphex Twin.
Richard James. Aphex Twin.
Yeah. All right.
I said it right. Yeah. But he was doing like a really strange electronic music back then, but the lowest register playing instrument in woodwind.
Yeah, very rough one.
And but I haven't regretted because I studied it for over 5 years and became quite good at it, and I played in orchestra projects and
very nice.
And many gigs, any kind of gig maybe at a.
So you have bassoon, was it? Yes.
Yeah, bassoon.
Very, very lovely sound there is. You know, you own bassoon, you play it regularly, I suppose.
Yeah, I still try to keep my skills up.
Very good, good.
But not quite so often than I used to when I was studying it. Like not every day.
So you mentioned about orchestra that it interested you and kind of opened your your works in that. How has it reflected your, let's say, music for this game project that you are doing? This orchestral side.
Yeah, like I said, I was changing my style to more orchestral stuff in late 90s. I bought Roland's orchestra module and really started practicing the orchestral composing by myself. I didn't have nobody to help me with that, but it was more like experiencing it by yourself, listening to how other composed music and try to find your own way.
Was that easy?
To do the same.
Was that easy to do? Self-learning and doing that sort of work.
No, not really. But it became with the time. Yeah, like if I studied it for like 7 years to compose orchestral way. Of course, I had some skills in when later I developed myself.
May I ask, what is your first musical breakthrough in your career? What could it be?
It must be the Amnesia, the Dark Descent, because the Penumbra trilogy developed by Frictional Games as well before Amnesia. It was more like a cult classic. It wasn't that known around. So at this point, I was still looking for projects, asking for developers if they could have me something. But after Amnesia, there wasn't no need to hunt projects anymore, because then it turned vice versa, and I was asked if I could do projects.
Very nice, very nice. So Amnesia was really a breakthrough in that sense.
Yeah.
How was it how was the change? You started working for Amnesia, you made the soundtrack, and currently afterwards, what was the effect afterwards?
What was the effect?
I mean, you made the compositions there, and you started then did you before that do regularly game music for projects, or did you only start after that do more?
Yeah, I did the Codeblender stuff and a few minor projects before that, but this really changed everything. Before Penumbra, I didn't know anything about making horror music, so that's something I had to experience myself as well. But for Amnesia or Penumbra, it was more like it had more traditional. I think it gave a different edge because I was also limited by the fact I couldn't use or didn't want to use any instruments that didn't exist before the game's on. So my source material was really real instruments, samples of course, mostly, but the way I did the music for Amnesia was...
Before that?
I think it was after Amnesia, because that's what I was... it gave me my name as three times longer or so.
So how so? Is it that the projects, or is it that you have something else on the other side?
Yeah, I'm working as a media producer in this company called Otavia. I produce media for web courses, which you can study, and hiring in-house composers.
I see. So, then there's big gaps in between, and then you work on other stuff in that time. Sort of fashion.
Yeah, it's more seasonal, like now in summer. I have a summer vacation from my daytime job, and now it's my time to work on game music. Then and look from the window when the sun is shining, and but that's okay.
Is it that sort of like a thing that if you would have this sort of people say, hey, I have a full-time composing thing, or do you like more the fact that it's kind of seasonal? What is the thing you prefer on the making music side?
I've been used to this because the entrepreneur side of the music business, it isn't that secure. And, for paying the mortgage of your house, you need to have a
constant flow,
constant income, and game music really isn't that. It's insecure.
Is the insecure part because of the as you mentioned, some projects might have big gaps without no work on the thing because you of course do the music side of things, or like what could that be?
Yeah, maybe it would be like I would have been taking a risk from trying to get into full-time position as a composer because first of all, like I have a daytime job and I couldn't go just try to catch a few big projects because then I would have been in trouble, and it wouldn't have worked like that way.
Of course, it depends, and as you say, it's very volatile. Making music for many people, people have went to my channel and asked me sometimes, how to start doing this, and it's you would say that possibly that it's not that secure all the time. Making music as your main career.
And then there's this thing like in game projects, you have deadlines. And you are responsible for your work. If you don't catch the deadline, then you're in trouble. And so less project for me and less trouble, I guess. So I wouldn't have that much pressure in my job.
I see. Well, that's a very good thing. You can work on it in a good ways to make the thing you want to do. My question is now that you have made this sort of dark ambient style music, like for SOMA and others. What is the greatest challenge of making music for these sort of dark game environments?
Yeah, like I told, the horror thing for me was new when I started working on Penumbra. And for Amnesia, it was more about manipulating sound. And for SOMA, when I jumped to the synthetic sound almost entirely, 80% of the job was probably creating those sounds, and 20% was composing.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah, I was creating instruments all the time, and that's because the most minute.
How do you approach it?
By the atmosphere it gives me, like a artistic style colors I see, because I'm quite visual person when it comes to influences, and I always must think of something visual when I compose. And if I see a room different,
how do you approach it?
Yeah, I started thinking like some kind of sound. I don't probably need to do it from scratch, but I rarely use any preset sounds from anything. Like I might browse for presets from some synthesizer plugin and think like this has some good element going on somewhere, and I must tweak that.
So Jimmy Hautajärvi here, who asked, actually, he was very interested about this interview. He asked, I'm impressed how dynamic Mikko can write for projects, the stressful moments, but also calm ones as well as colorful harmonies and melodic writing. Acoustic instruments versus electronic instruments, ?
Yeah, hello Jimmy, and thanks for asking. And I use them both. Like I have loads of instruments in my room, like some instruments which I can't even play, but I'm using them for making sound effects. We know the bassoon sound I made from Amnesia, like for the water chase element. That's one sound I made that way, like it's a bassoon played in wrong way to make those horrible sounds.
That is really nice, and that that makes the atmosphere in there. So what level was that?
It was before the back hall, the first place where you can relax. There's this water monster. I don't have that much time pressure on my hands, because if I can do the music for 5 years, then few others, but I don't really know, because if I'm not good at instrument, like I've been trying to learn playing cello, but I'm not good at it, and it's very.
So
They
it's
weren't that.
so it's
In a certain way, it's for me. It's enough if I can play some tunes, if I can utilize these instruments for my projects. That's I don't. I'm not planning to become a concert player or like anything, but the
but
thing
you can
is,
use the sound.
yeah, the thing is to learn the basics, and then you can utilize them for your projects.
Well, that's very good. Some composers they know every instrument, but
With sound effects. But I was doing the music, and I only communicated with Jens. I might have few words with Tapio, but not much.
Right. Crystal Clear says hello, and Mikko. Crystal Clear asked a question. When did you become a composer?
When I guess when I made my first tune in the beginning of the 90s, but when I first got paid for something that I do was my first game project, Deep Trouble in 2002.
Deep Trouble 2002, the submarine game.
Yeah.
Are you still working with those people, that you worked back in the day?
No, not really.
Is it like,
But,
when you have these collaborators, some people I've interviewed, they say that they have these one people, and they sometimes work with them long times. Do you have this sort of, oftentimes collaborators?
Not many. Like I've been working for Frictional Games like for 14 years now.
Oh, nice.
Like I done soundtracks for every developed games. Besides the Amnesia Machine for Pigs, which was developed by a different developer, the Chinese Room, and they had their own composer for that. I don't know after this project, but let's hope I'm with the new Frictional Games project as well. But then I've been working for some smaller projects. Everything is actually horror games. There's this game called Cold Side, which is a Ukrainian developer, Adro Games.
Can it be found in internet somewhere?
Yeah, if you find try to find the Cold Side horror game, and you find their Steam page.
All right.
And then there's I did some couple of tracks for Captured, which is a horror game by Sir Bedlam Productions, which have some interesting horror games.
Cult says that they are going to be releasing in 2020. So you're going to be having many projects released in 2020, possibly.
Yeah, probably, and maybe this Captured as well. And then there's this. Last year I did this small game called Designer's Curse, which is developed by Christian Blandford, which is a young 16 years old boy, which I call a wonder boy because for 16 years of age he has developed many games. He's an awesome skills with the piano.
Can you say what his name again?
And this one was a Designer's Curse. And
can you repeat the name? I didn't hear. So what's the name of this wonder 16-year-old person?
Christian Blandford.
Christian Blandford. How did you meet him?
If you try to find Designer's Curse horror game, you will probably find the Steam page as well.
All right. Yeah. So how you met him in this sort of course?
He found me. He asked me for his project, and as well as these other projects as well. They asked me.
Very nice. So so you're very open-minded if people ask you for projects overall.
Yeah. Not. I won't accept every project, but if there's some potential in the project, and if it's interesting, I might join in.
I see.
Even if it's a small project, because they're fun to do.
So do you often like doing smaller projects even?
Yeah, because it doesn't take that much time to do them, and it can be fun.
Yes, indeed. The thing is now that we have this sort of channel that we have people over here. We had Crystal Clear, who unfortunately said he has to go because internet going down. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But my question from people, I suppose, is that what is your tip for modern day composers that want to?
People wanted to hire me for their projects, so it really gives benefits to have a project in your portfolio like Amnesia, like one big project.
It does help a lot, and you mentioned at the same time that when you started working with people, you can just you get connected with people more, and I suppose in the beginning it's the hardest for many people to before they.
Yeah, it is. I got lucky, I think.
Of course, you have you know how to make some music, and of course you were not just hired because of random chance. You are very at least what I've heard, your pieces, they are very nice, neat, dark sounding songs, especially in those games. We have a question from Jimmy Hautajärvi here, which is he asks, how is the Finnish composer scene? Does Mikko find it a great thing living in Finland as a composer?
Finnish composers scene for games, there are like 5 or 6 bigger composers to do anything else than working with these projects. But when I have some time, I've been working on some ambient music, not that scary type of ambient, but maybe I will release an album sometime. Maybe, who knows?
So yeah, some projects are in works, and perhaps with this autumn we're going to be seeing some Mikko Tarmia's future projects. Mikko Tarmia, I thank you very much for this interview. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. If you have any further questions, let me know.
Yeah, if people have any questions, I tell you, I'll have to tell you, your story is interesting. How you started with, was it Amiga or what was the gaming console in the earlier times?
I started with Amiga.
Amiga, and then you climb forward, and now you were making music for games. Doing this horror style and such. My personal question is that do you do actively also like other music styles, like let's say very much not just ambient but something else as well? Do you have time for that?
I have nothing that I maybe not going to release, but sometimes I write acoustic music, and sometimes I try electronic music, and maybe sometimes if I'm satisfied enough with that, I have my website at mikko.tarmia.com. Yeah.
mikkotarmia.com indeed.
Yeah, but there's not much info. But I try to be more active in Twitter, and you can also contact me with Twitter or email if you want to.
Indeed, so if I can still ask one question, do you use a lot of your time, let's say, putting your stuff to this? I've looked at there are some of these composer communities that use a lot of time in these Twitters and YouTubes and these sort of places. Do you more work on the music, or do you how much you do this sort of social media stuff, I suppose?
I'm not doing social media. I had a Facebook, but I quit using it